What's up guys, Tim Little, Matt Allen, welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we got another buyer's guide for you. Today we are talking Ned Rigs, best heads, best baits. We got you covered, let's go.
Today we're continuing on with the buyer's guide series. Now why did we go with the Ned Rig? Of all things, why is that the next one up? Well, it's very simple. The Ned Rig continues to be the hottest finesse trend in bass fishing. I cast last year, every major company in the entire industry introduced at least a Ned bait, if not a line of Ned baits. It's incredible how many baits have come to market. So it went from being probably the simplest technique there was. You just grab a bait, throw it out there, let a fish come to you. I mean, it was literally that easy, to now you're trying to wade through dozens, if not hundreds of baits and heads to try and figure out what this technique is about. And it really doesn't have to be that complicated. So today we've got a handful of baits, 2 primary baits, and then some things that you can do to mix it up. So the first one is the original. This is just the ZMan Finesse TRD. That little guy right there, just a little tiny stick bait made out of Elastec. That was the original. And you know, it's funny, I actually got a shot at Ned Rig fishing way before it became popular industry-wide. I had a client come on my boat throwing a Ned Rig and give me some baits. And it's one of those things where I'll just never forget that I blew it. It took years for it to gain popularity and for me to realize that, hey, that's the same bait that I've had this entire time. It was just such a simple thing, it snuck right by. But the Ned Rig is all about simplicity. It's a very simple bait on an exposed head. It sits on bottom and you don't work it very much. It's a very finesse approach. It works year round, but it absolutely shines through the winter months when a lot of other things don't. So my first bait is the original, and that is the Finesse TRD.
Is that the same pack you were given like 20 years ago?
So it's not the same pack, but I do still have, I actually kept that pack despite buying dozens and dozens. Yeah, I've got that pack still.
So the Ned Rig. So like Matt said, we get so many questions about different baits, and it continues to be one of, if not the hottest or most talked about finesse technique there is, you know, and so we want to keep it simple for you guys because like Matt said, there are so many different baits out of the market now, so many different heads, but we actually have a lot of confidence in this technique. Caught a lot of fish on, a lot of big fish, and we've really narrowed it down to specific baits, pretty much specific colors or types of colors, and then specific heads. So the TRD, like Matt talked about, the original TRD, that is the original, right? Our number 2, we've talked about this one for years. This one is actually made by RoboWorm. This is their Ned head, or Ned bait. This color right here is called Desert Craw. That is a very special color for me. I've caught so many fish. That doesn't matter if I'm in the Great Lakes, fishing Havasu in Arizona or up in California, that bait right there works. Now the difference, that's the Elastec. So you're gonna catch a ton of fish on this, but it has a different action than the Robo. This has a lot of salt in it, so it's gonna actually sink and lay down versus stand up like that guy. So it depends on which or how you're fishing it, which type of bait you're gonna go with, but those are our number 1 and number 2 baits right there. Yeah. The benefit of the RoboWorm is you get all of RoboWorm's colors. You know, you pull out a RoboWorm catalog or you look at them on Tackle Warehouse, I mean, they got 30 to 60 colors in their worms and stuff, so they're gonna continue to grow the colors in their Ned Rig, but they have some winners right now.
So those 2 are the basics. When we go out, if we're gonna throw a Ned Rig, one of those 2 is what gets tied on if we're on a new fishery. But like any technique, as it develops, as more people do it, you start branching out to get away from the norm, if you will. So we started looking at all these different baits. Companies are coming out with baits. We're trying different things. Some of them absolute winners. Some of them not worth the time at all. These next handful were baits that were winners. Not only have we caught a pile of fish on them, almost all of these we've filmed underwater. We've used in underwater footage. You guys have seen fish eating them underwater. If we weren't doing videos every single day right now, we'd overlay some of that footage for you, but we can't possibly do that this week. There's no way. But the next one up, still Z-Man, is the ticklers. So it's that same basic TRD bait, but it's got 4 appendages up here on the top of that bait. That's all it is, 4 little appendages. But underwater, it's totally different. It adds a lot of action. So typically when you're fishing this bait, it's a very dead bait. You throw it out, you let it go to bottom, and then you just barely move it. And you just let it sit. But that ticklers, when you're doing that, you're still doing the same thing. There's a lot more movement when you are moving it, and it has been very effective.
Yeah, the Ned Rig in general, like Matt talked about, it is a dead bait. You don't want to over work it, right? So these baits right here, like I said, have caught a ton of fish. One bait that really stands out to me, it's a little bit different than the others, is going to be the Ned Bomb, my by Missile Baits. Now you can see this box right here. I'll open it up for you. This is my Ned box.
You called me a hoarder.
I haven't had these for 20 years. So you can see right in here, I got the Robos and I have the missiles. The only reason I don't have the Z-Man is because they don't play nice with other plastics. I want to give that warning. You have to keep them in their own bags, separated, because they will melt everything else. But those are our 1, 2, and 3. At least my 1, 2, and 3. Yep. Z-Man, Robo, and the missile. So the missile is a little different because it has a different tail on it. So you still have that kind of TRD body, but you kind of have like that beaver tail on the bottom. So when you're just sitting this on bottom, you're not working it hardly at all. That tail up there is just very nonchalantly just moving around in the current, moving around with the water, and just a very enticing bait. Missile baits, they came out with some core shot, last year maybe?
I think that was
some
last year.
really cool colors. But the Missile Baits Ned Bomb is a winner. Again, we'll link all this stuff down below in the video description, and we'll pick like 1 or 2 of our favorite colors out of all these that are must-haves.
All right, my next one is a completely different bait. So this is X Zone. All right, this is their 3-inch Ned Zone. Now this one came to be because we were comparing baits underwater. We had, I don't know, a couple dozen baits that we were filming underwater and then lining them up and comparing their actions. And underwater, in hand, I mean, it doesn't look like much compared to any of the others, right? Similar body with a little bit of a bulbous tail on it. Underwater, completely different animal. You'd hop that thing along, you'd let it sit, and that tail would just sit there and just waggle. And it just always had movement. It was always going, and it looked completely different than all of the others. Once we saw that in the footage, we gave that bait more time in our actual fishing than we had before, and it became a standout. So that is one that I fish a lot because it has that completely different action. Now, it is moving more than any other bait. So, dead of winter, fish are shut down, and you're on that true, just dead Ned bite. Just letting it sit. And then you just barely move it, and you let it sit. That's not the bait. That original TRD or that Robo Worm are the bait. But when that water's warmer, things should be good. You should be catching fish, and it's just not happening. You've got a tough day. This guy is a whole nother animal where you can pop that bait a little bit. Don't treat it like a traditional Ned. Fish it a little bit more, and that bait will just sit there, and it'll work for you, and it will catch those tough, finicky fish on a rough day.
And that is the key with the Ned. The key is it catches fish when other techniques won't, right? It is the deal. When the bite gets tough, that is the bait you need to slow down and fish. I was going to rig one of these up for you guys. I don't even know if you guys can see it, but the next bait I want to talk about is going to be sticking with that Z-Man, that Elastec plastic. It's going to be the craws. The TRD craws, again, it's just another kind of different profile. You know, this is a little crawdad, right? Little tentacles up there dancing around. Throw that on an 1/8 ounce head, a 1/4 ounce head, and just let it sit there, drag it along bottom. But that whole TRD line. I mean, they're the developers of the TRD.
Right.
All of these 4 different, well, we've talked about 3. He's got one coming. The ZMan, they're all winners.
So the last one I want to talk about is also ZMan. So again, when this started, it was that basic dead on the bottom, little worm doing nothing. But as it has developed, as more anglers are doing it, so there's added pressure, you need something different. But 2, as more anglers are doing it around the country, it is being thrown in different circumstances, different conditions. So they're creating baits to match those conditions. So Tim just talked about the craw. I'm talking about the bugs, which is essentially like a tiny beaver style bait, but again, in Elastec. And we know you're a little bit too far back. So if you can't see one of these baits perfectly, in the video description where we always link all the baits, we give you color recommendations. If you use those links, they'll go to Tackle Warehouse. You'll see up close photos of every single one of these. So don't worry about if we're moving around too much or you can't see the exact bait. This is the bugs. You'll be able to see an up close photo of it. But again, the idea here is that it's downsized. It's on that little tiny head. It's not that true Ned profile by any means. It's a little crawdad. But when the going gets tough and you're on a lake where you would normally be throwing a shaky head or a jig or a creature bait, you're throwing a Texas rig creature and it's just not happening, downsize to that little craw, downsize to that little creature, and you can get those fish. It's about consistency with the Ned rig. It will get a giant bite. Some huge fish have been caught on a Ned, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you need to get bit.
Right.
You're in a tournament, you need that last bite of the day. It's an off-weather day. Things aren't going your way, you need to catch some fish. You're out there and you just want to have a good time. You turn to that Ned rig.
Yeah, it's again, it's just a tried and true fish producing, fish catching technique. These baits all right here that we talked about, we've caught a ton of fish on all of them. They all have their specific times and conditions that they work best. But as far as heads and rigging, I keep it really simple. Maybe you got some different hooks that you use. I use 2 different hooks. I have the Owner blockhead, little lead head, and then the Swagger Tackle tungsten head. Obviously with the tungsten you get a little bit more sensitivity, better feel on bottom. It's a more dense metal, so that sensitivity transfers through that metal better than the lead, but they are a little bit more expensive. So if you're in a place where you're losing a lot of baits, getting hung up a lot, go with the blockhead. Obviously it's an Owner hook, so you can't go wrong with that. Right. But the Swagger and the blockhead. And then one tip for you guys, if you guys haven't done it yet, try taking your favorite Ned and putting a chartreuse head on it. Especially you smallmouth fishermen. Smallmouth hate chartreuse, but you take your favorite green pumpkin or your favorite, margarita mutilator bait and you throw a chartreuse head on it, you'll be surprised at what falls for that chartreuse head. But those are the heads, those are the baits. Let's talk, actually, rods. I'll probably link. I have some very specific rods that I use. I'll link those down below in the video description.
Yeah, I'll give you mine. Now, we were talking about it before. Tim uses a higher end rod than I do for Ned rig fishing, but I'll give you mine and we'll give you a budget version. I use a 610 medium light X-Pride. That is my Ned rig rod and I love it. I pair it with a 1000 size reel. This technique to me is all about having fun, right? So I've gone to a very, very, very soft rod and I just slow fish that bait and just lean on them when they eat that thing. Load up on those fish and just let them bulldog. I love that medium light action to just let those fish dig. It's a lot of fun. Now, like Tim said in the video description, I know he uses a higher end rod than I do, so we'll link his combo my combo and a budget combo to help you guys take the best advantage of this style of fishing.
Yeah, honestly, guys, if you're new to fishing or new to Ned Rig fishing, you could take your favorite drop shot rod or your favorite shaky head rod, your favorite worm rod, and catch fish on a Ned Rig.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's specific, a little bit longer, playing bigger smallmouth, longer castability, casting distance, we have some stuff for that as well. We'll link that. But you guys, if you haven't thrown a Ned Rig, you are missing the butt, especially when the bite gets tough. Wintertime, as the water cools, the fish slow down, and you can't buy a bite. Don't be afraid to pick up this little guy, because you will catch fish when others won't.
So, just wrapping it back up, we've got 7 baits here, which seems like a lot for a simple technique, except that we've pared it down from 200 or 300.
Right.
You've essentially got 2 primary baits. 2 or 3 baits to adapt from there if you want to try something different, and then those couple of craw or creature styles for something completely different. It's that simple. Couple of heads and go fishing. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. This is a continuation of the Buyer's Guide series. We will link the previous videos for you, and just know, again, tomorrow we've got another video for you every single day to help you guys as we're going through this time of year where guys are taking advantage of the holiday sales and as we're headed into the holiday season. Again, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you guys.